Our modern world is full of ideograms, simplified images meant to cleanly and unambiguously depict objects from everyday life. Drive down the street and you'll see dozens of them. 3 circles in a vertical rectangle for traffic lights, a stylized boy and girl for a school zone, a set of tracks for a railroad crossing. Scroll through your phone and you will find hundreds more. A curved line for a phone, a rectangle and a trapezoid for a speaker, nested curved lines for Wi-Fi, an eggplant for other things. But among these universally recognized symbols, one stands out as particularly strange: the heart symbol. After all, even those with the most rudimentary knowledge of human anatomy will recognize that this heart symbol, with its pointed lower end and double-lobed crown, looks almost nothing like a real human heart. So, where then did it come from? How did this unusual shape come to symbolize not only a vital internal organ, but the very concept of love itself? Well, here is the origin of how the ubiquitous heart symbol came to be. While today we know that the heart's function is to pump blood around the body, to our ancestors this organ was so much more. As its beating was the first detectable sign of life for a baby in the womb, and the most reliable way of telling if someone was alive or dead, the heart was believed by the ancients to be the very wellspring of life and the seat of the soul. In ancient Egyptian mythology, for example, the soul of the recently deceased would undergo a ceremony known as the weighing of the heart, overseen by Anubis, the jackal-headed god of mummification, and Thoth, the ibis-headed god of writing. The ceremony saw the deceased's heart being weighed on the scales against the feather of the goddess Mart, which represented truth and justice. If the heart was lighter than the feather, indicating a good and virtuous life, the soul of the deceased was allowed to proceed to the land of 2 fields. If, however, the heart was heavier than the feather, indicating a life of bad deeds, it would be immediately devoured by the half-hippo, half-crocodile god Amut, and the deceased soul would simply vanish. For this reason, when a person was mummified, great care was taken to remove and preserve their heart and other organs, which were stored separately in containers known as canopic jars. The brain, by contrast, was considered unimportant and removed from the skull to prevent it from putrefying, a procedure likely carried out by inserting a bronze tool through the nostril, whisking it around, and allowing the liquefied brain to drain out. Lovely. Given its important role in Egyptian culture, unsurprisingly, the image of the heart made its way into the Egyptian writing system as the hieroglyph Ib. However, this ideogram is very different from the modern heart symbol, taking the shape of an oblong vase with a flared neck and 2 handles representing the aorta and vena cava. The notion that the heart is the seat of personality and emotion, particularly love and passion, survived well into the Greek and Roman period, with the Greek poet Sappho of Lesbos writing in the 7th century BCE, "Love shook my heart like the wind on the mountain troubling the oak trees." It is also during this period that the first recognizably modern heart symbols began to emerge. Among the earliest known depictions of this symbol appeared on coins minted in the Greek and later Roman colony of Cyrene, now Shahat in modern-day Libya. But this shape did not represent the human heart, but rather the seed of a plant. Sulfium was a species of giant fennel, which once grew abundantly in the region and was used by the ancients as a medical panacea, with some of its many uses being listed by the Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder. The juice, which distills from sulfium, as we have already stated, and reckoned among the most precious gifts presented to us by nature, is made use of in numerous medical preparations. Employed by itself, it warms and revives persons benumbed with cold, and taken in drink it alleviates affections of the sinews. It is given to females in wine, and it is used with soft wool as a pessary to promote the menstrual discharge. Mixed with wax, it extracts corn on the feet after they have been loosened with a knife. A piece of it, the size of a chickpea, melted in water, acts as a diuretic. More relevant to our story, sulfium was also used as the ancient equivalent of the morning after pill to ward off pregnancy, and it is believed that this association between the plant and sex led to the shape of its seeds becoming associated with the concept of love in general. Alternatively, the shape could also be a simplified depiction of a vine or fig leaf, both of which were associated with Dionysus or Bacchus, the god of wine, fertility, and debauchery. Whatever the case, sulfium was so sought after for its alleged medicinal properties, and seemingly impossible given technology of the age to cultivate outside of its home region, that by the 1st century CE, it had been driven extinct. Another leading theory holds that the modern stylized heart shape is the result of centuries of misunderstandings regarding human anatomy, many of which can be traced directly to the influential writings of Greek philosopher Aristotle and Roman physician Claudius Galen. Despite the huge body of knowledge amassed by the ancient Egyptians, Aristotle and Galen largely based their descriptions of human anatomy on dissections of animals like Barbary apes and pigs, leading to some wildly inaccurate conclusions. For example, he believed that the heart was the body's natural furnace, process responsible for maintaining its temperature, and that blood was constantly being produced and consumed rather than circulated. He also described it as having 3 rather than 4 chambers, a conclusion likely reached by dissecting the heart of a frog. Interestingly, the Romans also believed that there was a vein known as the vena amoris running all the way from the heart to the 4th finger of the left hand, sometimes hypothesized to be the reason why wedding rings are traditionally worn on that finger. In the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church banned the practice of dissection, meaning physicians and scholars had to turn to ancient texts for anatomical knowledge. This led illustrators like Italian Guido da Vigeveno to depict the human heart, just as Aristotle and Galen had described it, sharply triangular with a divot at one end. Eventually, this depiction began appearing in popular artwork, especially in works dealing with the medieval concept of courtly love. One of the earliest known depictions of the symbol being used to represent love comes from the 1250 Romantic manuscript Roman à Poix by French writer Thibaut. In one illumination of the letter S, a young man kneels and holds up his long Aristotelian heart up to his lady love. At least, that is how the image is typically interpreted. It is equally possible that the object is not a heart but a pine cone, which at the time was often used as a symbol of fidelity and devotion. Or, as the pois of the manuscript's title means pear in French, it could simply be a pear. It certainly would be the first time that a passionate romance has gone pear-shaped. Whatever the case, by the 14th century, hearts had become firmly associated with love, and stylized depictions began appearing in illuminated manuscripts, paintings, tapestries, jewelry, and heraldry. One popular work which likely helped spread the symbol across Europe was the 1315 poem Documenti d'Amore by Florentine jurist Francesco Barberino, which, in one of its illustrations, depicts the naked figure of Cupid riding a galloping horse and showering bystanders with arrows, roses, and hearts. Other early examples of the modern heart shape appear in the 1344 manuscript The Romance of Alexander by Lambert et Tour and Alexandre de Bernay, and the 1410 tapestry The Gift of the Heart, both of which also depict the metaphorical act of giving one's heart to the object of one's affection. Up until this point, however, hearts were usually depicted upside down from their modern orientation, with the pointed end facing up. In the 15th century, however, this was reversed, with the updated version of the heart symbol being spread far and wide by another long-lived creation of the era, the modern deck of playing cards. The Catholic Church also played a major role in popularizing the stylized heart symbol. The heart has long played an important symbolic role in Christianity, as UCLA medieval literature professor Eric Jagger explains. People at the time thought of our hearts as books of memory, a place where God's commands are written and believed feelings for the beloved were somehow written on your heart. There were stories imagining female saints whose hearts are said to be cut open after their death, and inside their hearts are inscriptions indicating their love for God or Jesus. In 1673, a French nun named Marguerite Mary Alcock reported having multiple visions of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, miracles for which she was made a saint in 1920. Her descriptions formed the basis for many subsequent Catholic depictions of the Sacred Heart, which closely resemble the modern heart symbol, though typically embellished with other symbols such as the cross, flames, and the crown of thorns. While some Catholic scholars have argued that St. Margaret's visions are the origin of the modern heart symbol, as we have seen, the symbol was in use long before. By the 16th century, the stylized heart was well established as a symbol of love, though it was also used to represent other things. For instance, following the English Civil War of 1642 to 1652, royalists began wearing heart-shaped jewelry cut from rock crystal to memorialize the executor King Charles I. These later evolved into generic mourning jewelry, often containing hair or fingernail clippings of the deceased, and finally into love tokens and wedding gifts. Heart-shaped brooches, known as Lucanbroth in Scotland or witches' brooches elsewhere, were also used as talismans for warding off evil spirits, often being worn by pregnant women or pinned to babies' blankets. Eventually, however, the meaning of these pieces also evolved to indicate that one was bewitched by love, and a whole symbolic language grew up around heart-shaped jewelry. One heart, for example, meant the wearer had a sweetheart, while a double heart meant they were married. Hearts in jewelry reached the peak of their popularity during the Victorian era, with Queen Victoria herself often wearing a charm bracelet with hearts representing each of her children. It is also during this era that Valentine's Day, once a relatively obscure Catholic feast day, became the popular secular celebration of love we know and tolerate today, with the modern heart symbol appearing on countless homemade and mass-produced Valentine's Day cards. Since this time, the heart symbol has survived the decades relatively unchanged, with one important exception. In 1977, to stoke civil pride in a city racked by crime and teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, graphic designer Milton Glaser created the now iconic I Heart New York logo. Not only did this fixture of countless souvenir t-shirts, keychains, and other tchotchkes transform the heart symbol into a universally understood verb, but it also expanded its meaning from romantic love to literally any kind of affinity or affection. This more generic usage was further cemented in 1999 when Japanese cellular provider NTT Docomo released the first set of emojis for texting. Of the original 176 symbols in the set, 5 included the iconic heart shape. Today, the number of commonly used heart-based emojis is around 30 and growing, demonstrating the impressive and ever-evolving versatility of this ancient symbol.